Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. I'm your host, Kendra Corbin, and today I'm super excited because I am joined by a good friend of mine, Sue Justice. Sue is the owner and founder of Emery HR. She is a human resources business partner and as a certified woman-owned business, which is very cool. And she has over 30 years of extensive experience in the field of human resources. She's focused mostly in consulting and management roles, and she has experience in designing and servicing employee benefit programs. So she's got a wide background of different HR things, and I think she's going to be perfect to talk to us today a little bit about AI and human resources. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kendra.
Thanks so much for joining me today. All right. So the first thing I want to start off with is the bad stuff, and then we can end on a high note. A lot of people are using AI for work, right? Some companies don't want them using it. Some companies aren't aware they're using it. I just had a meeting with a client and they're like, do you think she used AI to generate the last email she sent out? And I'm like, well, let me reread it again. And I read it and I was like, yes, she did. I could tell because there was a lot of extra adjectives in there
Oh,
that she wouldn't have
doesn't
normally
matter.
used
Right?
because I get enough emails from her. And so he's like, well, should we have a policy around that? So that's my question to you. Should everybody
Absolutely.
have a policy around AI?
Absolutely. I think it doesn't matter your business. It helps to at least have a short blurb in your handbook and make sure it's on the forefront. Because, like you said, well, some people aren't even thinking about it. Comes across their screen like, I'll just use AI. And then, they're not even putting it to where now I'm working for my employer. I'm sending this out to a client. And it may not be a huge, major plagiarism or anything like that, but it makes sense for the employer to just put it out there and make people aware that we're aware of it and these are the rules.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I have rules around how I use AI. I don't put any client information, nothing
Hmm.
confidential, nothing that's not out there in the world. Now, I use it for my podcast show notes and I will upload our transcript, but nothing that we're talking about is confidential. So it's okay because it's going to be released soon anyway when AI helps me with the transcript. Is it okay enough to like add just sort of common sense guidelines like that into AI, or how detailed does a policy need to be?
Um, I would say everything you just said should be in every policy. Privacy is probably, especially with HR, obviously we're handling a lot of confidential information. For me, whether it's my clients or employees, and I think it absolutely has to be spelled out. Especially, you look at employee benefits and the whole HIPAA thing. PII, personal information, and that really condenses it. And I think, again, put it out there. You have to put it out there. Privacy, I think, is the really big thing. The other one is kind of like I mentioned, is just making sure people proof it, just like you did the person's email. So again, by putting it that in the policy and saying specifically what can't be in there, because then it's not necessarily clear. You can only put these things in there. And again, a lot of it, I'm thinking from the HR standpoint, because sometimes we're communicating back and forth through a secure network, and they're not necessarily thinking this information might be going out somewhere else or what have you, or picked up on.
No, I think that that's great. And I think one of the things that you told me a while ago is that an employee handbook is a legal document, right? So
Yes.
they are agreeing to reading it. They have to sign off that they saw it. You can let everybody know that there's updates to it, right? And if they sign off on it, it's a legal document.
Absolutely. And with any new policy or something that's important, I usually suggest two things. One, if you're making an amendment to your handbook, send it out to everybody on its own. Or if you're releasing a full handbook, make sure you break that out and say, please look at, we have a new policy. Please look at page 23, section 3 dash, A, and just to put it out there, because then obviously now you get another backup as far as employer. Exactly what you say, that handbook is our rule book, and it helps us in so many ways as employers. Should something come up, whether it's an unemployment thing, a termination thing, a discussion with a client, what have you. It's nice to have something in writing, and like you said, they sign off saying they read it. So more important, anybody who has a handbook, read it before you sign it.
Definitely read it because it's very interesting. I
Right.
usually enjoy like people will tell you like the vacation policy and then you read the handbook and you're like, that's not what this says.
Exactly. Yes, it's always that. I'm like going, no, to my HR people and anybody, even with clients HR, and I'm like, make sure you have read it and audit your policies, your procedures, and processes to make sure you are following that. Because it is, sometimes you're picking up from the person before you and you're just mirroring whatever that other person did. Well, if that person wasn't doing it or was in their head and they didn't write it down, you could definitely be, like you said, you're doing this policy for so long. Now you set a precedence, and it puts the HR and the managers and whoever in a difficult spot. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about AI helping in human resources. So we got out the punitive and the like, hey, have a
The
policy,
ugly,
decide
nasty.
what you want to allow and not allow, right? How can AI help when it comes to human resources?
I think AI can help in every area in specific ways. I will say the biggest focus right now and has been, whether people are necessarily aware of it, is in recruiting and onboarding. Because of those algorithms, it's so easy for it to go out and find resumes. So usually it's probably easier if you have an application tracking system, or even if you use Indeed. Indeed work does this very well. You put in the information that you're looking for. As an employer, these are the candidates, these are the experiences we're looking for, and it goes out and finds you matches. And obviously, purchasing the software, that software, depending again on the software and how well they write it, it can match you up with some amazing candidates. So now it just saved you, HR employer, a ton of time, because now you're screening that person. You're already at the phone call screening, and it's much better. It's worth a lot more. And then obviously the interviews and things like that, you get so much more out of it.
No, that's great. So what about AI is fantastic in operational standpoints and reducing some of those
Hmm.
administrative tasks. But let's talk a little bit more about I know one of the things that you're big on is the employee experience. And this goes for interns and I think even if you're a small coach or consultant and you're dealing with independent contractors and things like that, that experience is important. So, because you want them to stay working for you because they've got a lot of choices and options, right?
Hmm.
Um, so, talk to me about the employee experience. How does AI help supplement that and make it better?
Well, when I talk about the employee experience, it starts at inception. So that's that recruiting part. The first, your first contact with that potential employee candidate, whoever it is, you just already gave them an idea of who you are, Mr. Employer. So by cutting out a lot of that research and all of that, you can be more focused on the individual themselves and who you are as a company. So then next step is taking them through onboarding. It really helps in giving you ideas. AI is great for ideas, to then integrate into whatever your process may be for onboarding, and ways to make it richer and more fulfilling for that employee. The other piece I think AI is really getting to the point, and I'll probably talk about it a little bit more, is it can start personalizing things, because moving next to the onboarding can be is more like, it's not the orientation's first couple of days or whatever. Onboarding can go out to 96 months. So having that plan, one, it helps you maybe develop that plan, but it also can help you personalize that plan. Again, depending on the system that you have, pulling in those ideas, the more that you can personalize and make that employee feel welcome, uh, you care about them, personalization's huge. So going then through the life of the employee, so during that span of time, keeping employees engaged. Uh, Again, finding that personalized attention to them. What do they want to do? Career planning. Maybe they can do some improvements, or they really want to learn something. What type of classes can you give them? Whether it's to help them do better in the job that they have, or maybe they want to do they want to be promoted and they want to do a different position. I have a client, and I'm just going to focus on this for a second. I have a client that does AI for the manufacturing world, and it's amazing. Okay, way over my head, but these guys have PhDs. But they have an AI system that goes in, it molds itself, it learns around the person that actually is doing the trade or actually learning it. Amazing. So, um, all of those little pieces along the way, that help with it, whether it's the performance management, it can give you a little bit of a tool of how to handle it, maybe how to word it. A little caution, again, I'm going to put in there, make sure you review it, make sure maybe have somebody else look at it, especially, and this is overall, not just AI, but there's so many AI gives you little chat bots. So you can go in there and, it's off to the side and you're asking them HR questions. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with that? Remember, they won't have all those details. So in HR, usually it's really good to have some form of relationship. If you're not on a team, maybe a boss, a manager, or an outside source that you can run it by and say, okay, so and so. Does this make sense? Should I really say it this way? Um, so that is a big piece of it. I'm trying to think.
I
So that
remember
helps you evolve.
I remember those emails that used to go around, the funny emails around review time, and they
Oh
would say the
man.
things that you shouldn't say. And I still remember this one. It said, "This employee is going to go far. The sooner that they get going, the better." Like, don't type that. Have AI rewrite that.
Well, exactly, right? Right, yeah. Um, and exactly. Well, and I think I told you before is that, I'm not necessarily the most eloquent speaker. So a little AI is like, yeah, okay. Oh, that sounds so much better. But it's still me. It's just filling in some of those little where you get stuck, which is part of that policy thing. You're writing a letter or, to a client, to another vendor or what have you. It really helps clarify, I think, if you're looking for words. Um, the other piece I think that we talked about too, being in HR, we have a lot of things around bias. And it kind of goes both ways. One, it's really great doing resumes because you have a machine pulling these things out. It's not dealing with whatever you have in the back of your head um, that is an unknown bias that you're really not aware of it. So it's screening without any of that involved. Uh, and then again, it goes through the whole process. So if you're looking for a learning, putting together a training session, it's not necessarily pulling some of those biases in. It's really looking at, okay, this is the whole picture. These are our issues. These are the facts, I guess that's the way to say it. But also sometimes AI could have a bias. So depending on what you put in there, what it's feeding, whatever. So again, have somebody, reread it really well and then have somebody else word it. Because again, you have another perspective coming in.
Yeah, it's learned on a lot of internet data. And I think one of my hot
Mm-hmm.
buttons is punctuation goes inside the quotation marks. It's a hot button for me. Like my
Oh,
students,
look
I
at you.
teach,
Oh.
I'm adjunct faculty. It, I'm adjunct faculty at a local university here, and my students know if your punctuation's outside the quotation marks, because I encourage them to use AI for their
Oh,
assignments
right.
because they have to put stuff in, but I want them to get familiar with it and leveraging it. But I'm like, if your punctuation's outside the quotation marks, I'm going to assume you copied, pasted, didn't edit, and you get a 0 on that assignment because
Ooh,
it
there's a
literally
little
will
big
do
tip.
that on every single one. It does it on every single thing. And I'm like, because it learned on other people's mistakes.
Oh, right. So yeah, it's just
So
pulling.
you're right. it has biases that have been built in to what it learned from,
Mm-hmm.
which is historic data. May
Right.
not always be the best thing, right, for moving forward. And
Well,
again,
right.
I'm a huge fan of AI.
Right. Well, and we kind of mentioned too, it depends on what type of AI platform you're using. You know, um, if you have your own personal one, it's a little different than you're just going out to a public AI and it's pulling from obviously a much broader source of information. And, again, depending on where it's finding that information and how strong the source is that they're pulling it from.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's an important differentiation. I know like the legal field has been all over the news about people using it and not having accurate information and things like that. But, so other systems inside the legal field have gone out and built closed
Yeah.
systems that are off of real data so that there's less hallucinations, as it's called in the AI world.
Ah,
But I think that that's an important differentiator. And again, going back to the policies that we talked about, should be included in those policies. There is a differentiator. If you have a closed system that you're hosting and that you're managing and things like that, you might be more open and allow for more content to be put into it. But something like
right.
ChatGPT or Claude.ai, those systems, you might be a little bit less open to what gets put in there by your employees,
Mhm.
right?
Right. Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
But I think, again, when you're using it, when you're using AI and you're leveraging it to rewrite things, I mean, you can work on your employee goals, right? Based off their
Hmm.
job descriptions and the projects that they're managing. It can get really creative and provide, I would say, more insight and more realistic targets for them at times too.
Yeah. Exactly. I think, and we always encourage. Oh gosh, it's constant, but the time spans have been, shortening. It used to be, oh, just look at your handbook every 3 years, 2 to 3 years. Now it's look at it annually and probably even every few months, especially once you hear, ooh, AI, hot topic, jump in it. How is it going to affect my company? And, obviously it's been, HR has been, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with this. How do I, deal with it? Kind of like what you were saying earlier. Um, but it also helps with that whole refreshing. Part of that employee experience is, it gets stale. People come in, they're working, they're like, oh, this is the same onboarding I did with the last guys. Oh, still don't have my stuff ready. Nobody's here. Nobody said hello. And being able to juice that up and get ideas like, oh, put in a buddy system. And what are different ways you can do that? Okay, well, we're in manufacturing. Well, put it in there and say, get some ideas. And like you say, it can go throughout anywhere from, the learning to um, handling different situations, diversity and inclusion. How can we do this to maybe say, is this being biased? Am I forgetting something here? Um, anyway, so yeah, I think it can bring in so many cool ideas that are really helpful.
I love using AI for brainstorming. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the best things that it does. I release podcast episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, and on Tuesdays, there's solo shows. I will upload a list of my previous episodes, tell it what my theme is for this month, and say, okay, what ideas do you have? What's
Oh,
next? Here's the
absolutely.
target. And again, it can just come up with so many different ideas. You can put things that you tried and worked, things that tried and didn't work. I remember back in the day, when everybody would start in the office, right?
All right. Yeah.
I know that a lot of people have gone back to the office. Some people never left. But when everybody started in the office, one of the neat things is everybody would always take a picture of like their welcoming gifts and things like that were at their workstation when they started at some of the
Yeah.
cooler companies. It could even give you ideas for what to give employees, right?
Oh,
Because you don't
exactly.
necessarily want to
Yes.
give a pad of paper to someone that's going to be working on the line and has no place for paper,
Well, right. Yeah. Right.
unless
Here's
that
a
fits
pen.
into their job, right? But it could get
Right.
creative for different job roles. And I mean, I think it has amazing, amazing ideas.
Well, yeah, and I think piggybacking on that is, team building, getting ideas, of different type of events, or like I said, even a topic. You're doing team meetings. Boring. What can we throw in there to juice it up a little bit? I mean, get people moving. So, yes, again, AI is really good for that. And, and especially like you say, if you have that policy in the background of, still be aware, it may be a team meeting, but make sure that you're still not throwing information in there that could be biased, what have you, do another check. Again, using that AI to get you to another level that you might not have been at if you didn't have it. You know what I mean? Or you could send it around the office and have everybody proofread it. But just kidding.
Right, but it's leveraging your experience, which I think is neat. A friend of mine she wanted to run a team meeting, and it was like a little celebratory party. It was all over Teams, Microsoft Teams, or like the equivalent of Zoom if you don't use Teams. And I put into AI the different types of games that they could play to celebrate the person who was getting married and the person that was going off on leave because their wife had a baby. It's
Oh,
like
cool.
eh, she's like, "How do I make this fun?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Let's ask ChatGPT." And it came up with like
Right?
10 ideas. It was very cool, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot that you can do with it from that standpoint. But also, then again, looking to the bias side, you've used it before, I think, for surveys. Surveys are a huge place where there's a ton of bias in the question answering. You can get whatever answer you want out of a
Hmm.
survey based upon how you word the question, right? So it could provide input on old surveys. It could craft new surveys for you. How have you used it when creating surveys?
So I do actually have a little cheat sheet, and that kind of just goes in the background. And, with that, even when I give it to other HR people, I say, okay, so these are the things you want to be aware of when you're writing it. Because, like you said, I always say garbage in, garbage out. So it's going to read whatever you put in there. So being aware of tone, being more specific of exactly what you're looking for. But I have a cheat sheet of like the most common HR AI searches and how to word them. So those are really great. Again, because you're putting it in the survey, what being very clear what you're asking, and like you say, getting more of a neutral, putting that screen or what you're looking for being more neutral, and then you'll get better, more balanced feedback. But again, and then obviously then looking back and saying, okay, you might still want somebody else to read it, but and it also gives more detail to that survey. Like you're saying, there's a ton of templates that you can get out there. Oh my God, they've been around forever, but they're so generalized. They don't have anything to do with what you're looking for. But here's your 5 questions. Well, if you don't have those questions worded correctly, you're still not getting what you're looking for. You know what I mean? Usually a lot of surveys, they're big, or excuse me, they're short because you want the employees to answer them. You start getting in past 5, 6 questions, you're getting past like 2 minutes, 5 minutes that you have the employee's attention. They're just going to get rid of it. So trying to find the best that you can get out of them. Very true. Like you said, anything, those emails that you're sending out to employees, I think at one point doing like a open enrollment email to employees. Well, I got my little template, but each company is a little different, right? So let's get some ideas. Okay, we know we have to say this, this, and this, but how can we do it differently?
Yeah. No, I think that that's really insightful. So again, leverage AI a little bit to get out some of your bias on the way. So let me ask you one more question about AI, and that's where do you see it headed for HR?
Really, where I see, we're going to continue to see a lot of growth in the beginning of the employee experience. That recruiting, because it filters out so much. And I think that adding a little piece of it that I didn't mention, like resumes, just like anything else people can put out. And it's good to help you write a resume because it gives you ideas. This is what I did. How do I word that? Different ways of that. But also looking for certain things that that next level of resumes are already really fine tuned to make sure that they're not plagiarized. Um, but again, it's going to get better. So it's going to keep on getting better, and um, it's not going to get rid of us. It's not going to get rid of HR, human. And we use our resources, but we need to use them properly. But I think it's going to continue to make us as people be able to focus more detail on the really important things. I think it's also going to help us in analytics. So when we're working, we can help our bosses, our companies, our clients in providing them more data, because there's so much in human resources that it's more subjective. There's not tangible. So I think the more information we can get and being able to analyze that, I think that's also going to be extremely helpful.
No, it's very cool.
Yeah.
I think that that's an important message. AI is not necessarily eliminating a ton of positions. It's giving you more time to focus on what's important. And I think that that is a really cool thing because it's a tool.
Yeah.
It doesn't replace you. Again, may it replace copywriters at one point? Maybe. I think eventually it probably will replace quite a few. But right now, copywriters are in demand because they can communicate with AI systems, which is awesome. So very, very cool. Before I let you go, because this has been an awesome conversation about AI, how we're leveraging it in HR, and some things for you to be cautious of and conscious of as you manage your human resources, right? Because they're using AI, whether you're aware of it or not,
Right,
which I think is important to know.
exactly.
But this show is called Imperfect Marketing because marketing is anything but a perfect science. What has been your biggest marketing lesson learned as a business owner of an HR company for so many years?
Well, I think what I've learned, since we're friends and I've talked to you many times, is struggling that having a niche market, um, meaning that I've tried so many times to be everything to everyone with that fear that I'm limiting myself and I'm gonna lose out on business. But picking a niche or two, like for example, in my role, let's say manufacturing, small businesses tend to be, my clientele. And so, oh, well, let's do one more because there's a lot of small businesses out there. So you focus on that niche and you read to that. It doesn't mean that you're going to not get clients and talk to people outside of that. It just gives you a focus. So I think that has been the biggest thing. And sometimes I still struggle with it. In the back of my head saying, oh, you're giving up business. They're not going to come do that. But really, honestly, it does. Because again, businesses, in my world, I'm dealing with businesses. They all have their unique issues, but then their businesses, and so many of them, it overlaps. They have the same issues too. That's my huge one that I'm working on. So.
And I can tell you, I struggle with it all the time too. I think it's easier for us to do it for other people's businesses than ourselves because you're like, but I help everybody. It's
Right,
like,
right, exactly,
but if you're
exactly.
narrow, you can talk to that person, you can craft communications, you can get speaking engagements at events where those people are. When you start saying, yes, I help everybody, what conference are you going to? There isn't one for everybody. You know what I
Oh,
mean? So
exactly
it's
right.
it really opens you up to having much more focused and really more opportunities for your communications than if you're not focused. And yeah, it's something I've struggled with myself. And in 2024, as I'm becoming more disciplined, that's my word of the year. As I'm becoming more disciplined, that is something that I'm focusing on is being more disciplined in who my focus is and who I'm working with. So thank you so much for joining me today for this episode. I think that this will hopefully help people really think about how to use AI, not just in other aspects of their business like HR, but also that it's important to have policies and procedures around handling things like AI for your employees, your contractors. There's just so much at risk and your business reputation is one of them. So don't let something super cool like AI endanger your reputation.
Right.
Thank you so much. And if you learned something today, all of you that listening and watching, it would really help us out if you would rate or subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. And if you'd like to get in contact with Sue, we'll have her contact information in the show notes. Go ahead and feel free to reach out to her at any time. She is a wealth of knowledge, and I am sure she will help you out. Thank you all again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.